Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Grace of a Military Child in Life podcast. Military families are not like your traditional family. They are strong, brave, resilient, and some of the most incredible people I know. My name is Gracie, a U.S. Army BRAT, and I am your host. I am honored to be able to give military family members like myself a place for them to share their stories and experiences in the military life. Stay tuned for this week's guest. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Grace of a Military Child in Life. I'm super excited to welcome back Sarah Doran, who is military child, veteran herself, all over military. And she was back on the podcast originally. We looked November 15th, 2002. So season 1, episode 74. Listen to that. But Sarah, welcome back. How are you?
Thank you. I'm so good to be here. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So give us a rundown again of what it was like growing up in the military for you.
Yeah, so I grew up a military kid. My dad was an Army chaplain for most of my growing up years. Actually, before he was an Army chaplain, he was in the Air Force as an officer. I'm not entirely sure what he did in the Air Force, but by the time I was born, he was getting out of the Air Force, went to seminary to become a chaplain. And so then he became an Army chaplain in, what year was that? I don't even know. I was in first grade. So
Little Sarah.
I know, little Sarah. So that year was kind of a whirlwind. I went to 3 different first grades to kind of initiate me into being a military kid. And that was kind of shocking and hard, challenging for sure. But I spent all of my growing up years moving around from place to place and living the typical military kid lifestyle and getting to do fun things and travel and all of that as well. And then my dad didn't retire until well after I was an adult and had my own child.
Wow.
But
a long career.
It was, yeah, he did 30 years and retired, I guess, in 2014. So he's been a chaplain most of my life, I guess, in general. I joined the Army myself in 2007, which was a while ago. And I did 6 years as a helicopter mechanic and crew chief. I met my husband in 2008 and we were married in 2010. He was from the same unit. And then we both honorably discharged in 2013. And so now I'm a veteran and getting to live that side of the military life. And I write military kids books.
That's so awesome. So random question, and I don't think I asked you this before, but do you classify yourself as an Army brat or an Air Force brat then?
Oh, no, definitely Army, because I was in diapers when he was Air Force, and it was mostly Army that I remember.
Yeah.
So
the Army's better anyways, right? So
there's a reason I went Army and not Air Force.
Exactly. So yeah, no,
nothing against the Air Force. The Air Force is awesome.
The Air Force is awesome. My dad always says, like, if he could go back and do anything different, he would have joined the Air Force instead. So
actually, same. My dad actually tried to get me to go Air Force when I was considering joining the service, and the Air Force said, "Yeah, we can take you. Well, it'll be about 7 months before you can come in." And the Army's like, "We'll take you right away." And I was impatient. So that's really what it came down to. But yeah, I think if I were to do it over again, I'd probably go Air Force.
Listen, so many people say that. It's so crazy, but they treat you a little better. So why not? But
they do. Yeah.
There's just something special about the Army though. So
there is. Yeah.
Always Army for life.
I mean, as a kid, like, you don't play Air Force, like you play Army,
Right. Well, and I even hear the same with like Navy and Marines. It's like, you don't play Navy, Marines, you don't play Air Force, you always play Army.
Army, yeah.
They're little Army men for a reason, right? The Green Army men. So.
Right. Although now, who knows what they have now? I don't know. They might have stuff for other.
Exactly. Little Space Force guys, right?
I would love to see that.
Little astronauts.
Yes. That'd be so cute.
Oh, it would be. Oh my gosh. That should be our business venture then, right?
Right, there we go. What are we doing?
Uh, shouldn't be here writing books and hosting a podcast. We should be $1 million idea.
Right. Maybe in the next life we can
Next life.
have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. So this is not your first book you've written either, this new one coming out. So take us back to like your original days of like starting to write and what inspired that.
Oh gosh. Okay, it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. So, I've always been a writer, but I didn't necessarily realize that I wanted to be a book writer until the last several years. I've always journaled. I've always made lots of lists. I'm a really good note taker and studier. And I went to school after I got out of the army. I went to school to be a teacher. And while I was studying to be a teacher, I did an assignment. We had to kind of dive into the world of children's literature, and we had to pick a theme. So the theme that I chose was military children's literature because I thought, oh, that sounds like something I would probably appreciate.
Love that.
And what I found was actually shocking is that of the few resources that were available, which there weren't very many, they were often outdated, lacking in quality, or written from a place of inauthenticity. And I was just kind of sad, honestly. I mean, it's not something that I thought about when I was a kid, but I definitely didn't have kids' books growing up where I got to see soldiers or kids like me as military kids. And so that kind of planted the seed that I wanted to do something about this, but at the time I didn't really know what that meant. So fast forward several years to about 2019, 2020, I started kind of dabbling in writing children's stories. And the first couple were terrible. They were not good. But you all have to place, you have to
start somewhere.
And a friend of mine, I think I shared this on the last podcast, but a friend of mine was like, look, you need to write what you know.
Right.
And when I finally realized, military is what I know. I know the military culture and lifestyle. When I finally put that with my writing, the stories just really started taking off. And so The Peppered Sky is book number 1, and it's written based off of my memories of watching my dad perform in airborne training jumps outside of Fort Bragg, which is Fort Liberty now, I think.
Yes.
And so that was one of my favorite things to do, was to go out with my siblings and my mom and the dog and go out and play on the sand dunes while we waited for the airplanes to come overhead, and then we would get to watch them jump out of the airplanes. And so The Peppered Sky is all about that experience, written from the perspective of a military kid. And I just really wanted to create something that, yes, military kids go through some hard things and challenging things, and I don't want to say that those things are not important, but I also wanted to shed light on things that were fun and exciting and the adventures that military kids get to have, because our life is so different than the life of a regular child in the experiences that we get to have. And so shedding light on some of the fun and positive experiences was really what I wanted to do. And so The Peppered Sky was born, and we launched that last year in March.
I love that. And I just love the story of it, of like taking one of your own personal experiences that you loved as a child with your family and, putting it into something that, carries your legacy on, but also shares what military kids go through. And, you can't necessarily look at a civilian child and say, oh, yeah, let's go watch people jump from planes. And they're going to be like, what are we doing?
Yes. Yes. But that was a regular after school kind of activity for our family. And so it's cool. And I also, so coming from that education perspective, I wanted to create these stories not only just for military kids who can kind of experience and see themselves in these books, but also to kind of enlighten and educate civilian kids who are curious about military families and their lifestyle, because it is so foreign and unknown. So it's been really exciting to kind of hear from families, both military and civilian families, on how they're enjoying the story.
I love that. That's so fun. And just seeing, the progress of it. And then, now more books coming and, just so much and just, I know it takes a lot of preparation on your part, but,
It does.
so much that's coming from it. And honestly, coming from the podcast aspect of it, of listening to people's reactions to it. And I'm
Mhm.
sure you feel a similar way, but just hearing those positive reactions of people enjoying, the work that you're putting out is really what, for me at least, is what makes it, enjoyable. And, that's why I love what I do.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. But it is so worth it when I hear those stories. In fact, a mother just recently shared that she did this little video of her son's little library. Like he set up little books around the room for his special
Oh,
library. And the military, there was a little military section with my book and a couple others. And
I
it just
love
like blessed my heart.
that.
I was like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm doing this. So
Yeah. Even in those hard days where you're just,
yeah.
working and working away and it seems like the workload never goes away, those are the reminders of this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's
Yeah.
making an impact on so many lives, and that's truly what matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us about the next book coming out, Sleeping Giants, and I'm so excited to hear about it.
So when I was in the Army, I was a helicopter mechanic and crew chief. A crew chief is just somebody, it's the door gunner essentially, but it's somebody who's also a mechanic typically. So if you're flying with a helicopter, something happens and you need to fix something, the idea is that your mechanic or crew chief is there and they can help. And so Sleeping Giants is based primarily off of my experiences as a mechanic and crew chief. I worked on Black Hawk helicopters. And so Black Hawks are definitely in this book.
Which is so
Um,
cool, by the way. Like, so cool.
yeah, it was so fun to write this story and to see that it come to life through the illustrations that my illustrator Angie is doing. It has Black Hawk helicopters, Chinooks, and Apaches. Those are the three I was most familiar with in my service, although I did only work on Black Hawks. But this story is about Finn, a little military kid boy, and his helicopter mechanic mom. And they kind of have, I guess you could call it like a take your kid to work day. And they get to go to the hangar and see something really special. I won't tell you what it is, but while he's waiting for that special thing to happen, he gets to kind of play and pretend with the helicopters. And so he goes on these little imaginative adventures and missions. And it is so fun. It is so fun. So he goes on an Apache mission, he goes on a Black Hawk mission and a Chinook mission. And his mom is there and in his stories. And it's just a really special story. It's fun and there's also still, like my first book, those warm fuzzies at the end.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a very well
Yay.
received book.
Yeah, I love how, the first book kind of incorporates your life as a military child, but then this one incorporates your career in it and, your time of service. And so you're kind of getting very personal stories at the same point of more or less advocating for military kids.
Yeah. So my heart is definitely coming from a place of advocating for military kids and families and wanting to see them in quality literature.
Right.
But authenticity is something that I'm a huge advocate for as well. And so you can't necessarily write stories that you don't know from your own experiences, or I mean, you can, but they're not going to be as well written or received as if they had been written from a place of authenticity. So my goal and my hope is I would love to expand beyond the Army in future stories, but making sure that I'm doing the research with those families from those branches, those other jobs, to be able to make sure that the stories remain authentic and true.
Yeah. And it's so important to really, like you said earlier, be able to see yourself in a book. For kids, that's huge. Being able to say, oh, hey, I'm like, so and so in this book, and being able to put the pieces together to be able to, get that, in a sense, outside perspective of what your life is like. And so being able to see yourself, even when my dad was in the military, thinking 2011, there weren't books that, you know, for military kids who could see themselves in writing. And the books I really remember are, okay, well, my dad has to go. And,
Right.
that deployment kind of, uh, overlooking book. But then the other one is like military ABCs. And so, like, that doesn't really, while it's fun for kids and stuff, but it doesn't necessarily, you don't see yourself in it. You don't see military
Right.
kids and the struggles they're going through. And so going
Yeah.
to a civilian school in Cleveland, Ohio, there's no military bases around. There were
Right.
no other military kids besides one. And
Yeah.
so you don't, it's hard to say, hey, this is what I'm going through. And
Right.
now it's like, hey, this is what I'm going through in a book. It's not me telling you and trying to put into words what I'm going through myself.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I've heard from a lot of schools that are not necessarily on base schools, but they're very military connected schools that have a large population of military families.
Yeah,
And I'm finding that the teachers and librarians are really drawn to these books because not only is the story, something that's engaging for kids, but it is educational and showing them another type of culture that they're not familiar with.
right.
I also am making a point to include in every book that I'm putting out there these extra resources and activity pages. I don't know if
Yeah,
you saw that from the first book, but it
yes.
answers some certain questions. How do paratroopers keep us safe? And what do they mean by the cost of freedom? And book number 2 is no different. I have really exciting activities and resources planned for this one as well.
And that's the biggest thing is not only the book and, the pictures and the
Yeah.
visuals and the words in the book, but then it's here are additional resources. Here's some discussions that you can have based off of, and even, that question of freedom, like what is it? Like
Mhm.
it's something that, is talked about, but it's like overlooked in a sense because we don't have to think about it, in this
Exactly.
country. And so there's even people who still go, why do we need our military? Like, what is our military really even doing?
Absolutely.
And
Right.
so going back to that, simple thing of what is freedom is huge for
Yeah.
why everything is the way it is.
Exactly. I've actually started branching out from my books and creating more educational resources. So I've recently created digital download of educational supplement activities and workbook pages for teachers or homeschoolers or whoever to be able to look a little deeper into airborne military history and
Yeah.
where our airborne bases are and what are some of these terms that you use in this book like a paratrooper and airborne and what do they mean and what kind of training do they have to go through and what makes them different than your typical soldier or service member. And I'm hoping to be able to expand that to help kind of bridge the gap because I do think that there's a huge gap in education regarding our veterans and our military history that our general population needs to include in their education. So
Yeah. That's awesome. And you having your education background, like, I'm sure it makes it so much easier for you, but then also more valuable to, parents and teachers who are actually going to be utilizing those resources.
yeah, that's truly my hope.
Yeah, and it's really fun, hearing after your success with the first book,
Mhm.
how the second book has come around and is, taking shape and being able to flourish with, continuing your journey of advocating for military kids and sharing stories of military families like you've been through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so exciting. It's truly like a dream come true getting to see these stories that are inside of my head and my heart out into paper. And then for
Yeah.
to work with these amazingly talented illustrators and designers who get to help me create this beautiful product, and that then we're able to share that with the world. It's just been so rewarding to be able to see it all come to fruition, and now a second time.
Yeah, absolutely. And your Kickstarter is coming up soon too.
Yeah.
So that is going to be huge. And tell everyone, because what even is a Kickstarter? Like some people don't even realize what it is and what it means.
I ran a Kickstarter back in 2022. I think that was before we actually chatted the first time.
I think so.
I had no idea what it was before I decided, I'm going to do this. So essentially, Kickstarter is a way for creatives, not just authors, but any kind of creative, to kind of jumpstart their business or to help it expand or grow. Funding is no joke. It takes a lot to create these quality resources, and especially for me, I want to print in the United States. I feel like that's really important to my readers and important to the type of book I'm creating. And so funding is a big problem. So Kickstarter is a place where you can come, and those who believe in your project and want to see it succeed or see it expand, as in the case for this one, can come to Kickstarter. They can find your campaign. And typically they run for about a month. And what the creative does is create reward tiers. It's kind of complicated. But there's reward tiers, and it's basically a way where you can pick a package that you like based off of what you want to do to help contribute to the project. If it is fully funded, your goal amount is fully funded, then at the end of the month, end of the campaign, your backers will be charged for whatever package they chose, and the project will come to life in however that creative decided. And so it's really interesting because, like I said, it's not just authors who are using this platform to help kind of jumpstart or expand, but it's inventors and artists and small business owners who are just needing to fund whatever it is that they've imagined.
I love that.
For my first book, I used Kickstarter to help fund the actual creative process. So the illustration, the design, and the initial print run. And it was a successful Kickstarter. It worked beautifully. And the book was able to come to be published in March of last year. And I was not planning on doing another Kickstarter for the second book. What's different about this one is the funding amount is much smaller this time around, which is great, less stressful for me.
Right.
But this is specifically helping me be able to do a bulk print run in the United States, which is very costly. If I'm able to go beyond the initial funding goal, I'll actually also be able to expand distribution, which will include getting the book into post exchanges. So AAFES, I know, is Army. I think they have different names for the other branches. I'm not sure, but expanded distribution is a huge goal of mine. And so depending on how far we get with the campaign, we might be able to actually expand distribution or even start on book number 3.
That is huge. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Because even just getting into that distribution and being able to sell it where military kids really are,
right.
That's huge.
Yeah. I think that this is really going to help my small business be able to expand and grow in the ways that I need to see it growing. Right now, I'm just so limited in where I'm being able to get the books out there. And so I know that this will make a huge difference for military families and accessibility.
Right.
So that was what it is, why I'm doing it and how it works. But it's actually not super complicated. So if somebody wants to actually go on and support the campaign, my campaign is going to run from the 1st of April through the end of the month. So, and it's actually perfect because it's month of the military kid. Yes. So what better time to support a military children's book author and get your hands on an early released book. But all you have to do is just go on and create a free account on Kickstarter. And then on April 1st, set your calendar, set your reminders, and you go on and you pick which package you want to support. Your credit card is never charged until it is fully funded at the end of the campaign. And if it's not fully funded, you won't be charged for anything. So it's very low risk. And then the biggest thing that I need help with is just sharing the campaign. So being on your podcast is amazing because it's going to help get the word out there that this is happening and that I need support from our military families.
Yeah, I love that. And that's the biggest thing. And that's why I love the military community so much. Our little corner of the world that we have, because we're all just so supportive of everyone
Yeah.
else. We've been through, whether you're a family member or spouse, a veteran yourself, service member,
Mhm.
child, adult child, like
Yes.
ourselves,
Right.
we just have this connection back to, I always say it's the community that gave me my life. Like it's where
Yes.
I was formed. And so I feel like we just have that passion to give back in any way that we can, and even something as small and as low risk as a Kickstarter campaign and helping get the word out there of military kids and what we go through and in a
Yes.
book. Like that's just the littlest thing that we can do to help support other military kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really love what you said about how the military community helped to kind of form you. And
Yeah.
it's true. It is its own culture and community of support. And that's actually part of why I joined the Army when I did, because they were going to take that ID card away. We talked about this last time, that when they
Yes.
take that ID card away, you're like, but that's my home. That's my
I
family.
know.
That's what I know and my lifestyle. And so, anyway, yeah, joining the Army was what I chose to do to combat those feelings, I
Yeah.
guess.
2 years later, I'm still like holding on tight to that. And, I'll be 23 in 2025, so I'll be 22 this year. And so
Um,
that time's coming. So I'm like holding on
it
to
is.
it from my dear life. Like, I don't want this to go. It's going to
I
be, a
know.
little memory then once it's
I know.
gone.
Well, it's so funny you said you're 22. I
Yeah.
turned 22 at basic training.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
it
What
was
a
not a
22nd
fun
birthday.
birthday. What was that?
What is birthday?
Oh, it was crazy. I was very fit though.
Look back on that. My
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. And, just where you've come from there, like so much has changed. And even
Oh,
though
yeah.
not being in the military anymore, just the way you're still continuing, in a different way, your service to the country and to the community.
That's part of what I love about making military kids books, is that I'm able to kind of foster this pride in our family heritage,
Yeah.
community and culture, but also this legacy of serving others, because that is so important. Military families don't necessarily, they definitely serve.
Right.
It's not necessarily because they want to, service member, but I think that we are all taught from an early age how important it is to serve others and to serve our country. And
Right.
you don't have to be a service member to do that. And there's so many ways that you can support our military and what they're doing in our families. And I think that through these books, I'm being able to help teach everybody else about how they can get involved.
Yeah, and that's huge. And like you said, you don't have to necessarily serve, you know, in the military to serve the military to serve this
Right.
country. There are so many ways to do that, and just giving back and acknowledging those families that do
Yeah,
serve is huge, because, a lot of service members say it themselves, but they wouldn't be able to do what they do without their family behind them.
exactly.
So it's really a family effort. It's a country effort
Yeah,
to make this possible.
absolutely. America.
Yes. So before we wrap up, you've been on before,
Mhm.
so you're kind of prepared for this, but what advice would you give to another military child?
I would give the advice to a military child to recognize the hard times, but to embrace the adventure as well.
Yeah. So fun because there's so many adventures that come in. If you blink, you're gonna pass right by them, and that's it. So,
yes.
Your 22nd birthday in boot camp, that was an adventure in itself. So.
Although I'm kind of glad that one blinked by quick. Oh my goodness.
Exactly. And where can listeners find you, connect with you, and hear more about everything you're doing and be prepared for your Kickstarter?
Yeah. So my website is www.authorsarahdoran.com, Sarah with an H. And Instagram and Facebook, you can find me on both of those as well. Just look up author Sarah Doran and you should find me. Shoot me a message anytime you have questions. I love hearing from readers and seeing photos of their littles reading and enjoying my books. So always looking forward to connecting with more military families and readers. So.
Yay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for being on the podcast and sharing more of your journey and also how you're helping the military community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. It's always a blast.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, follow, and comment. Also, be sure to check out Instagram and Facebook at Grace of a Military Child and Life for more awesome content. For information on the podcast, Military Child Bigs and Littles, GOAMCL blog, or other resources, visit www.goamcl.org. You can also email me at Gracie, that's GRACIE @goamcl.org with any questions or comments. To be a guest on the podcast, you can schedule it at www.goamcl.org/schedule a podcast, all one word, or contact me via social media or email. Stay tuned for the next episode where another incredible story is shared.